שלום, ערב טוב ובוקר טוב.
בוקר טוב, אצל מי?
בניו יורק.
ממש שאנשים עוד מצטרפים אלינו.
סן פרנסיסקו, 8:30 בבוקר.
וואי, וואי, את קשוחה, מורן.
צער בעלי חיים.
יש לנו עוד הצטרפות.
חברים, גם...
אז אולי נחכה עוד 2-3 דקות, ועוד 2 דקות, ונתחיל.
2 דקות זה יהיה...
Hello?
הלו, היי ליאז.
מה שלומך?
מצוין, מה שלומך? איזה כיף לראות אותך פה איתנו.
מה, אני בלבד? ואז אין פה שידור?
יש, אנחנו מחכים ל-35, כי עוד יש הצטרפות מסוימת של אנשים, ואנחנו מתחילים עוד חצי דקה.
No problem, תודה.
אוקיי, שלום לכולם וברוכים הבאים. אז לכל החברים אצלנו בפייסבוק, אני תות, ואני I'm the CEO of 365X, and I'm a partner at Sarona. And as we started during this COVID period to launch a series of webinars, we are very excited to have with us today a special webinar that speaks about the US across border from coast to coast, what is happening in the United States during the COVID, what are the opportunities that are opening up, what kind of supporting system Israeli startups can have. So this is what we're going to speak about today. And we have with us 3 very special guests. Inoon Elroi, which is the Israeli Economic Minister to the East Coast. Moran Zilberstein, the Head of Economic and Trade Mission to the West Coast. And Natalie Gutman-Chen, which is the Head of International Financing Department, that is eventually can share with you everything that you need to know in order to how to get financing and support and grants from the Ministry of Economy and Industry. So this is what we have here with us today. The format of this session is going to be an interview kind of session. So maybe Inoon, Moran, and Natalie, I will let you say hi so everyone will know who you are, and then we will kick it off.
Okay, good afternoon, Israel. This is Inoon from New York. As you could see, I'm the only male here, so you couldn't make a mistake that that's going to be me. I'm looking forward. I'm very happy and thankful for Sarona Group for inviting us, inviting me. I'm looking forward to share with you a little bit what we see here, and of course, listen to any questions you may have. Thanks.
Hi everyone, Boker Tov. Shalom from San Francisco. So as Inoon said, thank you Tut and Sarona partners for inviting us to this, I think, very important session. So I'm looking forward also after the session to maybe connect with some of the Israeli companies joining us today.
Hi everyone. I'm Natalie Gutman-Chen. I'm actually thanking Sarona not only for the opportunity to speak with all those companies, but also for hosting me in the offices. This way you won't hear three very loud kids going around and shouting. And I'll be happy to share with you the information about our programs later.
Hello, hello, hello.
Wow.
מעניינים.
Are you in Israel or New York?
Hello, everyone.
ינון.
Really great to have you, everyone, here. So the way we will push the questions, you can post questions at any time. If you have any, you can put them in the chat, and we will select the ones that make sense for all, and we will read them. I will read them out loud, and Inon, Moran, and Natalie could refer to them. So shall we begin?
Shoot.
All right. So the first question that was interesting for us to hear from you is, how do you see the impact of the COVID in the US? Which industries were impacted? What are the impact on the economy? The level of the intensity of business that has been going on? Really, any aspect that you have to share about that.
Okay, thank you. I'll take this one, and Moran will add as long as she may have some additional input. So just to be on the same page, we're talking about in the US 1.5 million positive, around 88,000 unfortunate deaths. With all that in mind, New York State 351,000 positives and about 28.1 deaths. It won't be surprising that New York City is playing quite majority here. So this is the I would say the pathologic status, and as we all face around 8 to 9 closures of weeks of closures in most of the US states, and especially in the hotspots in New York, and as far as I understand, in many other states. We see a very high number of unemployment. Within the last 8 weeks, there were about 36.5 million unemployment or people that applied for unemployment support. 3 million only in the last week. These numbers are numbers that they have not seen since the Great Depression of the 1930s, 20s in the US. If you're looking on if we try to see different parameters, so the retail sales decreased in 16.4% only in April, and the manufacturing index decreased, both of them decreased in 13.7%. This is the highest monthly decrease ever since the index was launched in 1919. The estimation is that the unemployment will be around 70% in June, and the optimists believe that maybe the economy will start rebounding on the second part of the year. Now, every month the Wall Street Journal creates kind of a poll within economists. Last month, they estimated that the decrease of the GDP of the US will be 4.9%. This month, the same audience predicted that the decrease will be 6.6%. So as you could understand, the situation is quite challenging. Just to give you an example, the taxes of the state New Jersey decreased 60%, in comparative to last April, and this number reflects $3.5 billion. It goes in continuation to the consumers. McKinsey just published a poll they've done with consumers. So 47 of the consumers agree significantly that they will decrease or have been increased procurements. 65% of them are very worried from the provision of the US economy. By the way, within this group, more people are concerned from the economic provision than from health. We'll add another piece of that. JP Morgan Chase, one of the leading banks, reported of decrease of 40% of the usage or the sum, the procurement with their credit cards, and 70% from this 40%, 70% represent restaurants, which is not surprising as most of the restaurants are closed. Going forward, looking on the brand companies, and I'm talking now like, consumer goods, think about Coca-Cola, think about Hershey's and whatever. All these companies are getting into defense. They understand that they will have to fight with the private labels. By the way, the first, or let's say the 4 weeks between mid-March to mid-April, there was an increase of procurement of private label food products of 16.1%, and only 5.8% of the brand food. This may be an opportunity for all those of you who may help the producers to get better exposure to their products. New York and New Jersey, and I would say all the area is still suffering. New York still losing about 150 people a day. So I salute you in Israel for getting back into life. This is not the situation here. The pause in New York was extended to the end of the month. No schools at all. So kids are gonna be back to see their friends and teachers physically only in September. There's a huge debate or discussion now about summer schools, which are, or summer camps, which are very important here. And most of the people send their kids for a couple of weeks for summer camps, still to be seen. New Jersey, by the way, these days lose more people, about 240 a day. This is everything. This is more than, if I'm not mistaken, from all the deaths that were unfortunately took place in Israel. And if you like, there's also new concern from the last week in New York, because kids, they identified 100 kids that got some pathologies which may hints of connection with corona, which are similar to Kawasaki disease. Nothing you want to learn about it. So this is the very high end, but add into that so many US Fortune 500 companies already shared that they will continue allowing or asking their employees to work from home. So take the Pioneer Twitter that said that they will let their employees to work at home forever if they like, as long as they are able to do that. And if you take others like Google and Facebook and many others, which are speaking at least until the end of the year or even summer 2021, this is something that will surely have influence on the economic activity. Think about it. If less people are getting into the city, there are less need for restaurants, less people procuring and go to buy gifts or whatever after work, less usage of Via. There's another two companies. I don't want to do promotion for companies which are not Israelis, etc., etc. this is one thing which I consider that may be of greater importance for economic activity. And the second one is anything which got to do to cancellation of huge events. Most of the companies are not gonna hold physical oriented, if you like, events like the customer events they used to do, be it Facebook, be it Salesforce, be it Google. All those companies and many others already said that they would not hold their events on 2020. They will maybe hold them on 2021. They will also not let their employees participate in events of more than 50 people. Maybe this will change, you never know. But, you know, being here and considering the importance that the US companies are relating to liability, let's look what happened both in Mobile World Congress, RSA, and HIMSS. They all took place in February. The first companies that announced that they would not participate were the American companies, be it Amazon, be it IBM, be it Salesforce, Intel. In the different conferences, these guys were the first to say we're not going to participate. So I would not estimate or predict that they will be very pioneer and will take risk in the coming future, especially as we all not aware whether there's going to be a second wave or not. Not surprising, e-commerce has increased significantly. If you like, according to different articles, we see quite a lot of increase over there. Another thing you need to take into consideration: South America is still deep in. Mostly Brazil, but also Mexico. Mexico serves as a main partner to the US, and that means that many of the US manufacturers and also high-tech companies that may need contribution, technological contribution, be it goods or development from Mexico, suffer quite significantly. That's not just stories. 300 CEOs, American CEOs, sent a letter to the president of Mexico, asking him to identify additional sectors as essential sectors, because the difference between essential sectors in the US, which is more liberal, if you like, than the sectors that were identified in Mexico. So this is one thing we need to take into consideration. And the second thing that I think that you need to take into consideration is the increasing tense with China. There are conversations now about maybe creating restriction on foreign companies that use American technologies not to sell to Huawei. Okay, this is something from the recent days. Keep your ear open, because if you guys are working with both sides, keep it in mind. This is something which is bipartisan. It's not only of this administration. It seems that the situation is that the Americans are more and more worried about this issue, and take into consideration that the COVID-19 outbreak did not or had not supported the situation. Maybe one good or positive sign: New York Stock Exchange, the floor of the New York Stock Exchange is going to be reopened on May 26th, if I'm not mistaken. Yet very limited number of traders going to be there. Yet they probably going to tell them that they are not allowed to use mass transportation in order to get into the stock exchange. But I think that this is a sign of getting into normality, and we all hope that this is going to continue. That's for now. I hope you're not, depressed.
Thank you, Inon. What I would like to propose, we would like this session to be dynamic and dialogue-based. So I know some of you are already working in the US. You were working in the US before this started, and maybe you came back to Israel or you stayed in the US, or if you're not already working, you have ambitions to go work in the US. So I would like to encourage everyone in the, both in the Zoom session and in the Facebook Live, post your questions, even if it's tailor-made to your specific case, bring it up, and then we can put it in the discussion in order to make this session a more dynamic, in order for us to be able to address what is actually interesting for you. So you can just, while we are running on our question, you can post yours, and we will pick them up. Okay, Moran, do you have anything to add on the West Coast? Maybe referring more to investments on the side of the impact of COVID in the Silicon Valley and the region?
So I think Inon touched a lot of the important points. Maybe just to add from my perspective here in California or Silicon Valley, just in numbers, in today's date, we have almost 80,000 people now contracting the coronavirus here in California, and more than 3,000 people have died from it. And it makes California the fourth state in the US in terms of active cases right now in the US. And the unemployment rate that also Inon touched here in California, it's 18% unemployment rate. And just to put in perspective, in 2019, it was 4%. So we're talking about millions of people that have applied for unemployment benefits right now in California. And from the financial point of view, I think it's important to understand in other states and also here in California, the budget issue and the challenge here. Just in California alone, the deficit here is now more than $50 billion just in California. And I think it's important for companies to understand that this is the current situation, and in order to cover this deficit, the government here will pull back from a lot of investments and planned projects, and this is including also innovation and technology. So we're kind of seeing, as Inon mentioned, the economy taking a dive. And I think we will talk about the opportunities later, but I think it's important to understand the current situation, and companies that are aiming and targeting the US market or California or Silicon Valley. I think it's important to be pragmatic, to be realistic, to understand this environment, new environment that we're working in and living in. And I think it will help Israeli companies make better business and also strategic decisions. I think it's also important to add that as long as we're still under shelter in place, and this is the current situation here in California, and also it's in, I think it's in New York, there's a lot of unknown factor, and I think it's really hard to understand where we're going into, and I think that's an important context to add to this discussion that we're having today. In terms of investment that you asked, and I'll touch, and we have, I think, a question about it later, but we, of course, see less investment happening here. Most of the VCs are based here in Silicon Valley, and we're seeing the investors being very hesitant and cautious about spending their capital right now, and it's really hard for them to invest without being able to meet founders face-to-face. Apparently, this is something really important. It was actually it sounds obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me that investors are really hesitant to close deals without meeting founders face-to-face. There are probably small nuances that they catch and pick while they're meeting them face-to-face in a room. And this is something that we hear a lot from investors that we work here
with. There is a question here that actually resonates with the question we were about to ask. So obviously, both us and in 365X and Sarona and in the wide Israeli ecosystem, there are startups from almost any industry. And mostly the Israeli companies are targeting the US, as we all know very well. Do you see certain industries that are already back in business and are less impacted, and in the same spirit, maybe industries that are approaching you to look for specific solutions that you haven't seen before, but now you're seeing more, and that could be an opportunity for Israeli companies?
So we're having a lot of conversation. Maybe we have more time even to have conversation right now with US contacts that we're working with, and also VCs, and we're trying to learn and hear from them about what their current needs and what they're looking for, what their critical pain points right now. And to your question, yes, we're saying maybe the biggest winner right now is any kind of technologies that help and support working from home or remotely. Like that's, I think, the biggest winner of this COVID-19 situation. So any technologies that will help manage distributed teams, digital collaboration tools, for companies, video meeting platforms like Zoom, of course, that we see thriving right now, solution to communicate with distributed teams. So we see the chat now being like a superstar, and companies like Slack are also thriving. So any kind of tools and technologies to support this new kind of workplace environment that we're seeing right now. This is, I think, super hot and trendy right now. Maybe the second winner, and it's also a huge industry and focus that we see right now is digital health. With a focus, I'll say, on telehealth and mental health solutions. In telehealth, we see companies in the US like Teladoc. Actually, their headquarters is in New York. It's a huge, and I think one of the biggest telehealth providers in the US, and we see the revenues jumping 41% just in the first quarter. And this is in telehealth and mental health. Actually, we see startups in these fields raising a record number of more than $570 million in the first quarter. So both these two, I think, sectors definitely take a stand here. Cybersecurity, of course, I think it was important before, but maybe even now better. And I think the main solutions, at least what we hear from VCs and companies, the main solutions that they're looking for are solutions to secure distributed teams and distributed infrastructures. I think those are the main ones for the cyber industry. Solutions for education technology, e-learning, e-training. We hear a lot from VCs that they're looking to invest in it, and we're also hear from actually companies that are looking for different solutions to implement for their company. Anything related to supply chain, logistics, delivery technologies. I think the coronavirus unravel a lot of industries that are not efficient, and we've seen kind of the supply chain that is broken. So I think this, what we've seen actually created a lot of opportunities in this field for companies that have technologies for supply chain and logistics. In fintech, fintech is also going a digital transformation. So I think everything related to digital adoption and also fraud management. Those are two things that we've seen in the fintech industry. One interesting industry that is not related to what I've talked about so far is the broadcasting industry. And I don't know how many of you are following, the TV broadcasting revenue right now, but there is the predictions are that this industry will reach $37 billion in 2020. That's a huge number, and we see spikes in consumption of content, obviously because people are at home. With that, I think the main focus right now in this specific industry is everything related to streaming platforms. So any company that has a technology related to streaming platforms, I think that's a huge trend. I think this trend actually started before the pandemic, but I think the coronavirus and this pandemic actually accelerated the process, and we will see more people moving to streaming platforms, and probably the coronavirus basically shortened the timeline for this. What else? any kind of Tut, you need to stop me when you want because we can talk about this for days. But there are a lot of technologies related to customer experience and engagement. I think that's a huge thing in different variety of sectors. So it could be in the sports sector, it could be in entertainment and sport. I think that's together retail. So any kind of technology that can create new kind of engagement with audience. I think there is a lot of interest around that one. Of course, e-commerce, that's an obvious one. Everything related to cloud, AI, machine learning based enterprise software. We will see a shift to this and less on on-premises hardware. And maybe the last one that I will add is everything related to smart farming and food tech. I think those are probably the main verticals and sectors that we see here or hear from our network.
In regular times, what you are doing as the head of economy in the region, both you and Inon, I would guess, is basically to help Israeli companies to execute their go-to-market. So you're doing network and connections, and you're opening doors, you're generating meetings, you're helping them with commercial engagements. How do you see that this go-to-market is actually changed, if at all? And how can you still help Israeli companies in their efforts to go to the market? And is there still traction? How does it look like today?
So maybe I'll take this one, and Moran will join me later. Generally speaking, we used to bring every maybe second week a delegation of Israeli companies to the US, be it a roadshow or participating at a conference like RSA, CES, NRF, all the three letters conferences. Even one that we're working quite intensively as the whole Foreign Trade Administration of the Ministry of Economy and Industry, which is Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, when we host together with partners at the Israeli Export Institute, more than 60 or even 80 companies, and conduct for them more than 2,000 meetings with potential partners, investors, and other relevant stakeholders. All that fun naturally is very limited these days, but we're trying to do our best in order to expose the Israeli companies in different perspectives. One of them is a series of webinars that we've launched. So again, we use the power of the network of 44 Israeli economic mission globally. And in this context, together with the Israeli Export Institute or other partners, what we do is holding most of the time sectorial webinars. Many times we try to bring a player which is a reference in the world, like Sheba Hospital, for example. We've done with them several webinars, one for Eastern time and Western and West Coast, one for the time of Asia, and together with them we expose companies which are relevant in these sectors. So Sheba is just an example. We've done that with the cyber bureau. We've done that with the elderly homes. We've done that with other stakeholders too. So this would be one major activity that we do, and what we suggest is to companies to approach the sector managers at the Israeli Export Institute, that you work with them on a regular basis, and they will help you to be included in future similar webinars. So this is one. The second vector, if you like, is we're trying to push hard our partners, our warm contacts, and also to try to reach out to new contacts and try to understand with them their core needs and to see if they are open and interested in getting to know what could help them these days. Many companies, as you know better than me, had to re-modify, change, totally reimagine themselves, because you cannot hold events today in a, I don't know, a club, because nobody would come. So how do you survive? And that may be relevant to anyone. And if somebody used to work for textile companies that produced pants and shirts, maybe all of us today are a little bit less consuming shirts and pants, and these guys could modify their activities in order to produce PPEs. So they need maybe different processes, etc., etc. So this is the second thing. The third thing that we do, we try to continue and create platforms that will help you. For example, last week, the Innovation Authority published a call for proposal to Israeli companies that are interested to work with hospitals. So there are 4 hospitals that are inviting you to play with them together. One of them is Mayo Clinic. The other one is Jefferson from Philadelphia. The third one is Hartford Healthcare in Connecticut. And the last one is from a country in Europe. I don't want to make promotion to Germany, but okay, let's go. So this is another example. In addition, we're in the middle of call for proposal, of a process for a call for proposal with the state of New York in the middle of the mess. The state of New York and the Innovation Authority has agreed on holding pilots in smart cities for also Israeli companies, but the only funding that will be dedicated outside of the US is for Israeli companies through the Israel Innovation Authority. Until the end of May, communities and municipalities in the state of New York are supposed to submit applications to the state of New York. They will be selected, and after the selection, the Innovation Authority will publish to you, all you companies that are interested to do something with municipalities. I saw some of the questions. So, for example, all of you that may have technologies that may help municipalities with better continuity, with better tracking, with better communication with with better communication with the residents. Make sure that you see that. I already got a text from your very fast contact here, and Tut is already volunteering to help you to be exposed to that as soon as possible. Luckily, I was a cadet in the pilot course, so I saw on the right-hand side of my eye the text. So this is if you allow me this thing. Don't forget that you got Bird Foundation. The Bird Foundation is still active. You could ask us, ask Bird Foundation to find partners, etc., etc. And we also happy to help each one of you to try and find out your relative targets, be it, again, customers, be it integrators, be it investors, although Moran will probably say a word about that. Not necessarily going to be very easy. Anyway, it's not going to be very easy, and I think that I saw also a question or statement of Nissim. All the states, municipalities, agencies, and whoever going to have much less money. This is probably going to be the case. So you're going to have to fight harder with the local ones because they're going to lose, or they already lost, market share. It's not going to be a piece of cake. So like always, one need to fight about it. There's also a group of Chamber of Commerce, regional Chamber of Commerce. They work with us, most of them, and they will also be very happy to help. They are in a great need to support these days and very interested to bring value. So I think on my end, that covers most of what I wanted to say on this point. Maybe Moran has something to add.
Yeah, maybe I can add a few practical tips that we see working with companies, both Israeli ones and the US ones. I think that the first one, and I don't think any Israeli company can adopt this one, but companies should, and it's crazy thought, but should think about adopting freemium from free model to try the product. We see a lot of budget here frozen for companies, and they're not interested right now in paying to for new pilots or new technologies. And we learned from our experience working with both the Israeli side and the US side that if you offer free trial, it's better than, and it will help you gain maybe new customers in the future. So this is maybe the first one that is really important. So more freemium models. The second one, it's related more to the sell technique, is to try and use more bottom-up selling techniques. It's okay and to approach the decision makers in companies and do more top-down. But nowadays, I think it's important also to approach the lower level management or directly to to your potential users and offer them the product. So this will be the second practical tip. The third one sounds obvious, but I think it's really important, and we're telling the Israeli companies that we work with this and emphasize this, that this is a really critical time to get even closer to your customers or potential customers. I think that strong entrepreneurs will do and are doing probably extra communication right now with both their employees, but also with the market and with their customers. And when you're doing this extra communication, you learn more about their critical pain points, their needs, and I think it will enable you to do a better market fit to your product and to adjust and pivot your product and prioritize and also your company roadmap. So I think that's extra communication with customers. That will be probably the third tip. The fourth, and we actually hear it from VCs and investors here in Silicon Valley, is make sure that your business plan is flexible. The pace things are changing right now is extremely quick, and you need to make sure that your business plan can be flexible to frequent changes. So companies that are raising money right now and approaching VCs, make sure that the business plan that you provide them looks flexible and relevant to the current situation. I think I mentioned it before, but I'll emphasize this again. Make sure to make business decisions based on the current situation. Companies that think that we'll be back to the old normal and wait probably won't survive this crisis. And I think Inon mentioned it, and I'll just emphasize again, use digital means in order to communicate with your stakeholders in the market. And companies that are able to do virtual POCs and pilots and implementations, I think that will be a key right now. I think that's from my end.
All right, thank you. Maybe we'll take one question from the chat. Guy is asking, do you think that the situation in the US at the moment and the tendency of the US to favorize local companies, do you think that it will harm more now companies that are not American, for example, Israeli companies that are trying to reach out to US customers?
Maybe a very quick answer. I think that's going to be a global trend, and we see it already. I think that even in Israel, you see today that the friends from the Ministry of Finance are thinking a little bit different. I was the head of Mata Kahol Lavan in Israel in my previous job, and thinking about the situation that the government will put money in order to co-launch a factory for PPEs, I wouldn't dream about something like that. So these are news. So we hear governors, we hear mayors, we hear different stakeholders saying that the US need to invest much more in order to have local manufacturing ready and available for the US, for the critical goods, if you like. Don't forget that Israeli, every number, I can say every number, but you know, some people say that there are between 1,000 to 1,200 Israeli companies based in the US. If they have an American, you know, entity, they are Americans. So our case is not all the Israeli companies are in the same situation. That will play surely. And again, I think that we said it earlier, there's gonna be a tougher competition for sure.
Okay, there are quite a nice trend that we saw, at least on our side, in the past month and a half, of VCs that announced that they are looking to invest in ventures that address specific areas of COVID. First of all, do you see that also from within the US? Do you see this trend happening? And second, if we have startups that would like to approach these kind of investors, how do you recommend this to happen? And how can you help, if at all?
I think I'll take this one. Sitting in Silicon Valley here and speaking with a lot of investors on a daily basis. I think maybe let's start with a few facts that we see right now, at least on the venture capital, you know, current operation mode. So I think I mentioned it before, but investors are really extra cautious about spending their capital right now because this is a super risky environment for them, and it makes sense that they're holding back. One more thing that is important to understand, that VCs right now are spending less time evaluating new deals, and most of their focus, time, energy, resources, everything goes to their portfolio companies. Everything goes to their portfolio companies to make sure that these companies will survive this crisis. So I think this is another thing that is important to understand. Another thing, and I think I touched it also before, but investors are hesitant to close deals, new deals at least, without meeting the founders in person. I think that was a huge thing for me to understand, speaking with investors, because I understood the huge significance that they give to face-to-face meeting. So probably it will be super hard for them to close deals over Zoom. And they're trying, you know, the due diligence now is like reaching out to people that they trust, that maybe met the companies in person. They're looking for the closest in-person thing that they can get in order to receive feedback about the founders and to catch and get the small nuances that usually they learn from just meeting face-to-face the founders. So this is another thing that I think it's important to understand. And I think everything that I mentioned is leading to, and we're saying it, to a decrease in number of funding rounds. We see lower evaluations of companies. We see shrink in the size of the rounds, and also the time to close rounds and deals. It takes much longer because you can meet the founders in person. So everything takes much longer time. If in the past you could close a deal in 1 to 2 weeks, now it will take much more time to do it. And I think it's important for Israeli funders and CEOs that are currently trying to raise money and looking to approach investors to kind of take a deep dive into the mindset of the COVID-19 investor. And in their mind, as I mentioned, first of all, they're focusing on their portfolio companies, like that's their top interest right now. They're also looking at the amount of dry powder that they have right now in their funds, and I think that's important because I think there is unprecedented amounts of dry powder in VCs right now sitting here in Silicon Valley, and I think that's important fact. And as you mentioned, the third element is the pandemic, and they're looking at at the current trends. They're looking how, consumption shifted, how customer behavior changed, and they're looking for the key trends in order to invest in new areas. There are areas that, are off the table right now for investors. They're not looking at retail, they're not looking at travel and hospitality. So there are a few, I think, a few share economy, any kind of, solutions that are related to share economy, entertainment industry, that all these kind of industries took a big hit from this current situation. They're not looking at those industries. So I think it's also important for Israeli companies to understand the trends, to think how the environment changed and where investors are shifting their focus. That's in terms of the first question that you asked. Regarding the second question, because it's really important for them, the face-to-face and the relationship that they're building with founders and with companies, I think the first tip how to approach right now investors is warm intros. If you'll try cold ones, most of the chances that they won't reply to you or even open your email. So if you want to try to approach investors, you need to utilize your network and reach out through ecosystem players and through offices like Inon's and myself. And that we have a vast network of contacts here, and we are trusted referrals. So more of the chances that they will open an email from someone from my team and Inon's team than a cold email. So warm intros, that's for sure. I think another thing that companies should focus is to understand that we will see, I think, a shift in the focus of investors from growth. They're not looking for the next unicorn right now. They're not trying to push their companies to become the next unicorn, but we will see a shift from growth to profit margin and to revenue efficiency. And they will look for revenue efficiency when they will do a due diligence to companies. So I think it's also important for companies to prioritize their profitability over growth. So that's another aspect that I think is really important. And that's, I think, even extra important for early stage companies. They need to find ways, to keep their burn rate very low. And I think investors are looking at this thing right now, and to make their runways longer. If a typical runway was 12 months before, now it's supposed to be 24 months, and companies should aim for 24 months runways. Another aspect, I think, that we're hearing from VCs, I still need to have more discussion on this one, but we will see different models of investing, I think, and a shift to more convertible funding structures. Just to give an example, we will see probably VCs starting with a loan and not like investment, and then converted it into an equity at a later date with a discounted share price. And this structure probably will be more profitable for investors. So we will probably see different models of investing from VCs right now. And I think I mentioned it before as well, but I think it's really important. Investors are now trying to analyze and to understand this new tech environment that we're living in, and what's going to happen post-COVID-19 and where the opportunities lie. So I think it's really important for Israeli companies to do the same, and research and to understand the market better in order to pivot, your company or your product to that direction. So you need to ask your question, like where is the next growth in the economy will be. I think those are the main things. I don't know if Inon has anything to add from his perspective.
I think you covered quite diverse points. I will try to relate also to some of the questions that were there. One thing that people ask if there's any advice that you can give about working with the U.S. government about the COVID. So I will put on the chat a link to a post that we wrote like 3 weeks ago with a lot of links to procurement teams from different states and municipalities. I don't know if they're all operated now, but we will do it. There was also a question which is related to what Moran said earlier about should you choose or not choose working with Chinese investors. Maybe, you know, us answering this question could be, should you choose or not choose working in an area that you have gorillas working? So would you step into a market that Google or Facebook or other giants been there? This could be an opportunity and this could be a risk, and I think you should evaluate the advantages and the disadvantages for any of decision that you may take. I think that covers at the moment. Please see how you want to move forward. If you want us to answer different, I've wrote some answers, but please choose whatever you like.
Yeah. So David and Maor and Miri, Inon referred to your questions in the chat. There is another question here. I think the last one that you didn't refer to from Eyal. I'm not sure you have the technological observation of corporates in the US, but if you do, maybe you can refer to that. He's asking if you see any new approaches of companies in the US on the regards of software development. For example, if they are shifting from private network, internal network to public cloud, or any changes on the security requirements.
I cannot refer into the technical thing, but I can tell you that from different conversations that I had with several stakeholders within banks and other companies, think about it. They got, there was a hurricane, okay? One day, they got a request from their CEO or whatever. Guys, you remember all these thousands of people that used to come into offices? Well, it won't last. They need to work from distance, and you need to find a solution. So think about these guys, the CTOs, the CISOs, the network, the cloud, whatever. They had to find solutions and to make sure that all people will be able to work from distance globally, by the way, because we don't know where people were when they, maybe they couldn't go back and whatever. So you have to increase to make sure that all the platforms speak one with each other. You need to make sure that you don't sacrifice the security, be it both from attacks from outside and from internal, you know, manipulations. So clearly there was a great change of what's going on. By the way, just, you know, I had a very interesting call with contact with Bloomberg, and I asked him, okay, so what about, how is it going to you these days? Are you, I mean, are you bored? Told me, what, are you crazy? We had the most challenging month in April, because if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember if it was in April or in March, he said that there were 10 record days of trading in the stock exchanges, and they had maybe 1.5x requests for their services from different investors, institutions, and whatever. So again, I cannot dive into specific technology, but on general, it is clear that there is a lot of changes. This is one thing. Second, I think there were several questions about manufacturing and about what's going on there. So you should know that there's quite a lot of challenge over here, mostly in the food processing. There's a shortage of meat from different, be it chicken, pork, and veal, because several manufacturing sites were closed, and I'm not talking about one or two. A guy here is from around Atlanta. I think that also in Georgia there were several, and in Pennsylvania. They had a lot of cases, and therefore I assume that everything which got to do to making, enabling work at manufacturing sites in a better in a secure way, in a distance, if we allow social distancing. And I saw yesterday in the news, you see someone who work with a fork, so they have a plastic shield. They use a huge plastic shield that now supposed to protect them. You know, this is something you would never think of in 12 weeks back. And I'm sure that everything which got to do to that will be an automatization of manufacturing in that way or another, again, without being specific, would be something that may be in need. And when you ask what's the best way to approach, I would say that thinking also about integrators that may help these companies to find better solutions. So this is also something that we can work and help you with. But again, I don't want to get into details that may not be relevant for everybody. So feel free to approach us, Moran, me, or any other of the 42nd economic offices abroad. And we'll soon get into Natalie piece, because she's going to tell you how you can get support from the ministry, financial support about it, but I would not steal Tut's dominancy here.
You can, actually, you're doing it very well.
Just because I cannot see your face, so I couldn't see your face and to know what you're planning.
So actually, yes, what we want to hear now is after we understand what can we do in the US, Israeli companies in this time of COVID or post-COVID, let's see what the government has planned for us, both the Ministry of Economy and maybe the Innovation Authority. There are all kinds of plans that can help you to actually penetrate the US market and start to sell your solutions. So I will just pass on the torch to Natalie. And all three of you, Inon, Moran, and Natalie, perhaps you can post your emails in the chat so that everyone could just approach you if they would like. Natalie, stage is yours.
Thank you, Tut. So I will start presenting our programs, and maybe to focus you a little bit in two levels, I would say. One is the government programs, which are part of the Ministry of Economy, the Innovation Authority, in their bilateral programs and in their regular programs, support the R&D activities of companies in different stages. And as part of their programs, sometimes they can support some marketing activities, but the main idea of their programs is the R&D. We in the Foreign Trade Administration operates two programs that are focused only on the international marketing efforts of companies. I will focus today more on the second and younger program, which is called Shalav. Let's say, a bit bigger program called Smart Money, started in 2014, Kesef Chacham in Hebrew. And this program is relevant for companies that are a bit more mature in the market than what I think are my listener now. And the minimum requirement there is at least export of 1 million shekels per year in the 2 years prior to the submission. And there the budget is a bit bigger. It's only focused on one market, but I would like to focus only in the second program, in the program named Shalav. And for all of you that maybe I'm not answering your company, I'm open later for any questions related to Kesef Chacham. So Shalav is a newer program. It started in 2017. The idea was exactly to answer the younger companies, and by young, we don't mean only startups, we mean companies that export between 0 to 1 million shekel per year, and are doing their first steps in international marketing. And the idea is to support the main activities, the main expenses of international marketing. We operate by calls. We open a call at least once a year. I will talk about the new call, the new coming call, which will be open, I hope, in the next month, a bit later. And the company that would like to submit for this program, submit a marketing program, which is an annex to our directive, and an expense program, which has to relate, of course, to the marketing program. They have to choose two markets, sorry. And by markets, we mean countries. And if I'm talking about the US, we refer to the US as one market. So companies that would like to operate, let's say, in the US under the program, and to Canada or to Mexico or any other European country, for example, may submit to two markets, but it's not necessary. You can submit only for one market. What is the program gives? In general, until now, let's say, the program was for, the marketing program submitted was for 400,000 shekels, out of which, if a company and the program is accepted, they will get reimbursed of 50% of any expense. So if you got the maximum approved, so 400,000 shekels, you may get reimbursed for 200,000 shekels. Because of COVID-19, we amended the directive. We are in the process of amending the directive, and I hope that it will be approved, and the new budget will be 600,000 shekels, out of which 300,000 shekels can be reimbursed under the program. What kind of expenses we are talking about here? Some of the expenses I'm maybe as an intro to that, I would say I'm talking now with the COVID-19 experience on all of us. But I would like you all to imagine also the world, not only in the next few months, but also in a year from now and 2 years from now, as the program is for 2 years. And also it takes some time to get the answers from us. So imagine also not only the next few months, because I'm going to say that we support flights and we support exhibition expenses, which of course for today and for tomorrow may be not relevant, but if I'm looking at 1 year from now and 2 years from now, I'm sure they will all go back. We also support advisors, both in Israel and local advisors in the market, marketing advisors, of course. We support standardization expenses, legal service expenses that are all, of course, related to the market. All the expenses have to be related to the market that the program is talking about. All the new media, publication, Marcom, working on the website, translation of the website, promotion in social networks, all of these are also covered in the program, in both programs. In Shalav, we support a marketing director. It has to be someone new in the company that was that started his position in the maximum 6 months before the submission of the request, because the idea here is to encourage companies to to put more efforts in international marketing, in export, and this is why we do it, but with this limitation. What else? What did I forget? Yes, no, I think I covered most of the articles that we support under the program. So, what is the steps that company needs to do if they are interested to get the support of Shalav? As I mentioned, we will, first of all, we are operating under a Director General Directive, which for Shalav is number 5.12. It will be amended and published. The relevant one will be published soon. And then we can open a new call. The call is open usually for 1 month, in which in this time you can submit, all the submission is by, of course, online submissions with all the annexes. I will refer to 2 of the annexes that are the most important ones in 1 minute. And then there is the process of evaluation, which any of you that went through the evaluation process of the Innovation Authority, it has some similarities to this process, even though it's much more simple in our case. We are sending an evaluator from that works with us, that evaluates the company and the submissions and give its grade. You can see also in the directive how we grade the program, the submissions. And then there are committees that evaluates all the submissions. I do want to stress out that this year, because of the high demand last year, and of course the limited budget that we always have, we will have a priority of the first 100 submissions. This is why I highly recommend to any of you that are interested to start reading the directives, even if it's the old version, it won't be changed so much, and to ask us any question you have, and to start working on the annexes, which I will go through refer to in 1 minute. And then there are the answers. So what are the most important part of the submission? In the submission, there are 2 annexes that are the most important ones. Annex number 2 and Annex number 3. Number 2 is the marketing program. You can download it and see it even now on our website that we will gladly share with you. It's a marketing program. I think anyone that knows what he wants to do, who are the competitors, what are the strategy that they will going to do in the US or in any other country, can write it down. It's not an open document, okay? It has questions and you have to answer them, so you don't have to guess what we are looking for. And as detailed as you can be, the better. And then there is the Annex 3, which is the expenses. So according to the same articles I was mentioning before, flights, exhibition, etc., you need to define how much and on what you want to spend the money. Again, as precise and clear you'll be, then the evaluator and the committee will evaluate you favorably. You know, as much as we see that the company knows the market, knows the challenges, knows what they want to do, the better. So these are the 2 main, the most important ones that you can also start and work on before, even though the documents that are relevant for the submission will be published only when the call is open. But again, the annexes that are there now are quite similar. So you can already read it and see what is needed to be prepared. What else is important? I think I covered some of the minimum requirements for Shalav, but maybe just to be clear, since I'm not working here in the Zoom with the presentation, I will go over the main ones, and the full list is in the Director General Directive. First of all, it has to be an Israeli registered company. Not all the company has to sit in Israel, but it has to have a registration number in Israel, and it has to have the core operation in Israel. Again, it has to be a company. It cannot be what it called in Hebrew osek morshe or any of that sort, or any independent entity, I would say. It has to be, as I mentioned, up to 1 million shekels in one of the 2 years prior to the submission. There is a requirement of at least 500,000 revenue, again, in one of the last 3 years. But it could be also, if a company didn't reach this threshold, it can also present an investment of 3 million shekels in the last, 2 million shekels in the last 3 years, but it has to be real investment. So investment that you can see in the documents in the reports, the accounting reports of the company. But this is, you don't have to prove both, okay? So it's either you have 500,000 shekels revenues or the investments. And then another important point I want to stress to startups when I'm talking to startup is that we are looking for companies with a ready product, okay? Not companies that are still ongoing with the development stages, because the program is 2 years. You can extend it to another 6 months, but the idea here is that in these 2 years there will be, the main part of the execution of the marketing program. And for all those companies that are still in development, we see too many times that they are not using the money because they are not ready yet. This is why it's not written in the directive as a minimum requirement, but as a hard minimum requirement, I would say. But I can say that in the evaluation process, we look into it, and we are trying to focus ourselves in those companies that answer this requirement. What else? I don't know if there are any questions because I didn't had the time also to see. Let's see if I got any question. Tut, I don't see any questions to me.
No, it doesn't look like there are. Maybe we can stimulate
I
some.
shocked everybody.
What are the amounts that companies can receive? And
okay, so
maybe one word about the process of the application, because oftentimes when going into all those forms of the ministry, people kind of go lost because it's long and sometimes confusing. So if you can refer maybe to the amounts and to the process, if you can prepare what they're going to find when they're coming into those applications and what is expected from them in order to say the right things, I think that would be valuable.
Okay, so again for the budget for Shalav, which is the program I presented, is will be, I hope so, okay, if the amendment will be approved, will be 300,000 shekels. That this present 50% out of the marketing program. So I'll do it the other way around. The company is submitting a marketing program which can go up to 600,000 shekels. And the company, once the program is approved, they can get reimbursed of 50% of the approved budget, okay? Let's say, I will give an example, maybe it will be a bit clearer. A company submitted the program for 600,000 shekels, but sometimes one of the articles are not approved, just like in the Innovation Authority, sometimes they don't approve a certain article, a certain expense. So let's say the approved program is for 500,000 shekels. And then they have this as the 100% budget. For each expense they will do, let's say they used it for a flight to the US, okay? And they submitted the expense of this flight out of let's say 2,000 shekels of the flight ticket, they will get reimbursed of 50%. This way they can use it in 2 years or 2.5 years to utilize all the budget they got the approval for. Okay, is that clear? The Shalav program so far was a bit for a lower amount. It was for up to 400,000 shekels. So the budget the company saw, the reimbursement budget was 200,000 shekels. But because of the COVID, we got a special approval to go higher in the budgets of Shalav and to allow companies to submit a marketing program of up to 600,000 shekels.
Does the company have to be intensively developing technology and having their own IP, or is it also open to companies that are more business-oriented and doesn't have, such a huge R&D department?
It doesn't have to be. Miri, I saw your answer, and I will answer in a second. It doesn't have to be a product. It doesn't have to be. It could be also a service. Some of the business services we are not allowing. It is all detailed in the directive. I cannot say I can remember all of them, but we don't allow for the tourism, education, unless it's a service for e-learning, for example, that is allowed, but not when the service is the education. So a teacher that wants to teach, let's say, Hebrew to kids in the US, that won't be approved. But for an e-learning tool, that of course is a product for us. So services, it's let's say it's partly, but all the software products are of course a part of the program, could be submitted. We do not accept companies that are only doing the marketing for other companies, okay? So any consultancy companies or companies that are doing marketing for few other companies, it's the initial company that produce, never mind the product itself, being a solid product or a service, they have to submit it. This is, I think, answering your first question, but I do remember you had another one. For the submission. We want to believe, and I think we're right, that our submission process is much easier than the one of other authorities in the ministry and outside of the ministry. again, there are few documents you have to submit. Some of the documents needs to be signed by your accountant because it's the financial reports of the company. As I mentioned, Annex 2 and Annex 3 are the most important ones, the ones that you can already download and see on our website. But we do not think that a company has to use, for example, a outsourced advisor to complete our documents and our submissions. I think we get many submissions that advisors wrote, and I cannot say statistically that they tend to be approved more or less than submissions that were written by people from the company directly. When we evaluate a company, we do look into the readiness and how much the CEO and the other people from the company know the program, especially if an advisor wrote it for them. And for us, it's really unnecessary to use advisors. I don't know if this is exactly what you were targeting in your question, but again, we have hundreds of companies, also very kind of small ones, and we never saw huge problems, let's say, in the submission. I hope this is answering your question.
Yeah, good to hear.
Miri, which I do want to answer. Yes, Miri, you were asking about the 2 million investment, if it could be considered also the investment from the Innovation Authority. The answer is yes. And also the private money, private equity could be also. Dress, product, or I'm just reading once. I will read out loud the second question. In addition, regarding the 600,000 24 months program, does the program address a product or a company? In other words, and the same company applying more than once, addressing different products? So no, we do not look on different products. We look on the company efforts. A company can submit, they had to submit only one program, one submission per year. However, if let's say you submitted for the American market in 2020, then in 2021 you started your activities also in the UK, for example, then you can submit another marketing program. You can have two active programs in parallel in our programs.
Okay, I think
maybe just you know, many companies approach us and they are like challenged with the competition and the limited resources that they have anyway. So you know, as they say in the US, they say there's money on the floor here. I urge your companies to study that, explore this possibility, because you know it's hard enough to reach out and to compete and to find the right partners and whatever. And here, the government of Israel, and through the Ministry of Economy and Industry, offers you something unique. This is relatively new. It was not like that so many years ago. And luckily, we have Natalie, who's a professional and expert that used to be also served. She served on different economic missions, so she understands and her team what you may need. So even if it looks a little bit of bureaucracy, even if it looks, because, you know, we all taxpayers and we want to make sure that whoever got funding get it according to their, you know, maturity and the fact that they are the right one to get. But if you pass it, it's not differ from whatever, it may be even easier than submitting to the Innovation Authority and whatever. The end of the day, we tell you guys, you know what the best thing to do for you. You can propose to the ministry what you want to do, and we will then evaluate and compete you with other companies, because this is a competition, and those that will be mostly ready and applicable will hopefully gain that. So I don't know, Natalie, I hope I didn't say something which is not in line with what you informed, but I thought it's important to know. It's there for you.
And also pay attention that Natalie shared the link to the programs here in the chat. Also, Natalie, if you agree and if you communicate directly with companies, if you agree to share your email, I think it will be very beneficial.
Sure, I'll put it down. Again, I do want, we are in a bit of peculiar point in time, as I do want companies to consult and read all the rules of the program, which can be found in the website. However, there will be slight amendments. Also, the budget I was talking about will be amended. I cannot send anything formally yet because it's not been approved. But as we are holding this presentation today, I didn't want also to present any rule that are a bit outdated. So it's a bit peculiar. Saying if someone will read, for example, the website, he will see the old budget and not the new one that I was discussing. Also, other rules would be amended a little bit. But since the call will be open soon, and as I mentioned, there will be a priority for the first 100 submission, and only after this budget will be allocated, we will evaluate more submissions. It is important for companies to be ready and to submit as soon as we open it. One more thing about that, if a company wants to get the information about the open call, it can also send me a very short email, and we add them to the newsletter of the Foreign Trade Administration. We are publishing the call, of course, in different media, but that will be the most direct push that they can get the information about the opening call. And I'm writing right now my email.
Thank you so much, all three of you, Inon and Moran and Natalie. It was really beneficial, I hope, for everyone. And everyone, you have all emails of Inon, Moran, and Natalie here in the chat. You can approach them directly. They are, what is nice about what they're doing is that their entire purpose is that they're here to help you. This is why they are working. This is why they are employed. So take advantage of that. They're super active. They are so happy to help. They have amazing contacts and network. So use that. They're there to help you. Thank you for coming, all of you.
Thank you very much. I'm just adding to the link to the chat also the link of the different. We have a blog of all the Israel economic missions. So you have 44 capable person like Moran. I'm exceptional. So we have 44 economic missions globally, and each one of us is actually writing also posts about what happened in the prospective market and what kind of things you may like to know. So you may get information about that. You may get information about their contacts if you want to approach Brazil. Wait a week because this is a very challenging week in Brazil. But you could surely approach Milan already. They can go and see a little bit of air. So thank you very much for inviting us, and we're looking forward. We're very appreciative of what Sarona does here for the companies, especially with 365X here in New York, with Liron, and Maor is very helpful. And Guy and all the mentors which gives their time and that's amazing, having such experienced people helping you guys, and we can work together and in order to leverage your efforts and activities. So thanks a lot for inviting us.
Thank you from my end as well.